When will I know if it's live? Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. We're live.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Bracknell Forest Council Executive. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Bettison.
Thank you very much, and we note that all other members of the Executive are physically present in the room this evening. So we therefore now move to item 2, which is declarations of interest. So therefore, if any member has to declare or disclosable pecuniary or affected interest in the item for discussion this evening, namely the written statement of action, now is the moment to note this. Okay, so therefore we now need to go down to item 3, which is to consider and approve the minutes of the meeting the Executive held on the 24th of May 2022. Agreed? All in agreement? Thank you very much. And on item 4, I have not been notified of any urgent items of business, which means this takes us to item 5, which is the meeting of the Executive's business tonight, which is to consider the Special Educational Needs and Disability, a written statement of action produced in response to the Ofsted inspection. This item, I believe, is going to be introduced by Gráinne Siggins, the Executive Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors. And thank you also for giving us your time throughout the development of the written statement of action. It has been very much appreciated. Now, I am aware that the pack of papers you have in front of you are very lengthy in terms of detail and content. So I have agreed with Councillor Barnard that I will present a very short presentation, some of which you've seen before, just to actually go through the headlines, just to give the outline of what is the written statement of action, the process that we've engaged in to get it prepared, and the next steps in terms of that. So please bear with me whilst I share my screen. So can I firstly check that colleagues can all see the screen?
Yes. Yes, we can see the screen. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. And so, as you're all aware, we've been waiting for an inspection, joint inspection of our special educational needs and disability services for quite some years. The reforms came into play in 2014, and they created a new framework within which healthcare and local authorities needed to work together to improve the support around disabled children and those with special educational needs. What the framework did in terms of legislative framework, it actually created an inspection of those services by both the Care Quality Commission and also Ofsted. We were one of the last authorities or areas, because it's not just the local authority, areas in the country to be formally inspected under this round. So what we were aware of, and we did know that there were issues with our SEND services, and significant levels of progress had been made in trying to understand the areas of weakness, and with the SEN commissioning strategy having been developed in 2020 for 2022. Unfortunately, the progress of that was curtailed with the global pandemic. And so the levels of progress weren't made at the speed that the council and partners, our health partners, ideally wanted to do. And that did impact on the experience of both our parents, children and young people, and also that of our education partners. And for that, the council has already expressed severe regret and apologies, and actually committed to developing and significantly improving services. The self-assessment that we submitted prior to the inspection did articulate all of the areas that we felt that were strong, the areas that we were already working on and the areas that we still need to strengthen further. And that self-evaluation, self-assessment did identify that we knew those issues, and it was viewed as an accurate reflection of the work that we needed to do. We did receive the report, and we had a special meeting in March where the chief executive and others were present, just to give us the feedback on the report, and then later we had the next steps meeting. So in the document and on the screen are the main areas of significant weakness that were identified. And a few of these I just wanted just to pull out, just for framing differently, because this has actually led to us approaching the way that we've developed a written statement of action differently in terms of co-producing. And what I mean is, for example, lack of a clear co-produced strategy for how the much needed improvements and change will be brought about. So what they did see was a strategy. They did see a strategy with clear areas for development, but that strategy had been developed in the way the council traditionally works, in terms of consultation engagement, not co-production. So there was a real need for us to embrace what we're going to do within the written statement of action differently, and that will be further explained as we go through the presentation. So co-production is being viewed as vitally important in the way that we're currently working. So in the spirit of time and allowing for sufficient further questions at the end, in the documents we'll have seen this. So I'm going to move on from this slide. Now, when developing the written statement of action, the action plan that we already had in place had got key areas that we were going to progress. So those will continue to be used post-inspection as the areas of focus, which we continued, especially as the self-evaluation indicated we knew ourselves. But obviously further work was needed then to co-produce in immense detail the work that we needed to do. So again, the governance side, leadership, governance and accountability, commissioning and resource, how we're using our resources, including the high needs block funding, which a lot of you are aware of, provision and support, so implementing early support and intervention, strengthening and improving co-production, which we've just mentioned, and transition. There are a number of areas identified in the overarching report where we needed to strengthen the support at all stages of transition, from early years to primary school, from primary school to secondary, from secondary to post-16. So looking at all of those transitions and strengthening those further. We engaged a wide range of stakeholders in this whole process, and parents, carers, and young people listed on the screen, but our health partners, key partner Berkshire Health Foundation Trust, who are commissioned by Frimley Integrated Care System to deliver elements of the service, occupational therapy and mental health support for children and people. Obviously engaged our schools and school leaders, and we do need to just express special thanks to our school leaders for putting so much time into that development with us, which was incredibly helpful. Parents and carers have been fully committed and engaged, and in addition to the funding that's given by the Department for Education to the Parent Carer Forum to engage in this activity, we also have commissioned, both ourselves and from the ICS, we've commissioned extra work so we can have a little bit more input, recognising that the amount of work we're requiring our parent carers to work with us on is significant, at least in that short to medium term. So we've obviously also set up groups and engaged with young people too. So the process, we shaped the vision, we identified the priorities, a number of work streams were progressed. Each of them operated in the co-production manager. I think that in that co-production manager, we're describing the process as we're rebuilding the plane in flight. So ultimately, things were very rapidly changing inputs. So it's very much of an iterative process, which has caused some frustration to some of us who normally do all of that work in advance and then have a close to a final product. But it's been really interesting to see a significant amount of learning about co-production as part of that process. And everybody has been, who I've spoken to and who I've heard feedback from, has been very, very positive about how that's actually felt for them, and people feeling that we've got a much stronger written statement of action because of that process. So I'm not going to go into that detail either, or going through the strengths, but you will have heard Just a few of them are, just call out a few. So the Child Development Centre, which I know politically you've invested a significant amount of time and attention and recognition for that, again, continues to be called out by the various regulators in terms of its strength and what it provides. But there were positives in the report, as indicated. We've also got, excuse me. So we've also made some significant improvements as well, pre-inspection and post-inspection. So we have the document itself talked about panel processes, and it is mentioned in one of the areas for improvement. Now, when we did talk to them, they talked about green shoots because new panel processes. This is for making decision on what level of support is going to be made available to support a child with their educational needs, and what that plan looks like. So they've been revamped and they were in their early stages. Those have continued to be developed and evaluated. I'm getting some really positive feedback now from parents and school leaders on how well that's going. They are now actively involved. So the things we started before are now starting to come up even stronger with evaluation is the next step for that. In terms of the performance as well and education, health and care plans, you may know that there is a requirement for us on a third Thursday in January, very strange date. There is a census taken, and that census looks at the previous period and the previous year, and we are then counted at that date on the performance of the delivery of education, health and care plans within 20 weeks, and that figure is published nationally. In 2020, that figure was 20%. In 2021, it had gone up to 49%, which isn't vastly different to a lot of our neighbours. And when you look at the actual the figures, so significant improvement and obviously further improvements going forward in that space. So the key elements of the plan that you'll be able to see are listed on the screen. Again, I'll pull out co-production because it has been so important, and also provision. Just to talk about why are we in this space? Well, we all know that we have got a third of our children being educated out of borough, and we do not have sufficient capacity in borough. Now, last year, you saw the emerging work on the capital strategy, and you've contributed and signed off the work on the school place plan, and you'll see the richness of detail that we now have in that document, which now includes children and people with special educational needs for the first time. So there is the work that we're doing in implementing that will bring us more inclusive spaces within our schools and create better capacity in borough, but that will be medium to longer term in terms of increasing that provision. So the action plan, the 9 areas for improvement. So this is what we're planning to do, and the detail is in the document in front of you. So the first area, that new SEND strategy that we will co-produce, which outlines the improvements and how the changes will be made. The second area is around communication and improving communication. And again, these have all been described and identified and articulated and actions created with everybody involved, all of those agencies we described. So embedding co-production is also a key part of the work that we're planning to do that you'll see within the plan. The provision, as we've talked about, including the SEMH hub, which we've been talking about for quite some time and getting clarity on where that's going to be. And that has been highlighted by a number of our elected member colleagues. So thank you for that. The areas that we are worried about are area 5 and area 6. And the only reason I say that is because those are the ones, at least in part, that we rely on significant input from our health colleagues. And so the areas outside of our control. So that's the only reason why I'm expressing some worry and concern, because we do know that the delivery on reducing the waiting times for those services is not improving at this moment in time. It has actually got slightly worse. It has got worse. So we are still waiting on some final points on the action plan for these, which we've had commitment from our health colleagues that the final elements of that will be submitted, but we have got inputs from them, and we have got senior representation on the boards that overseen. But I did want to call those out just so that members are aware of the areas where we as officers are less confident, but it's purely about the level of control to do something about that. It's influence, negotiation, persuasion, rather than that more direct oversight. The new panel processes we talked about when I spoke to heads the other week, they were again giving me feedback of the ones they've been on, really positive. And we talked through evaluation. There was a few thoughts about tweaks, and I said, so we can feed that into the review process. So it was very positive to hear the feedback there from the head teachers. And also, obviously, we talked about those pathways and SEND, and I know it's been a focus about children and people who are not in education, employment and training. There were some areas of progress put in our self-evaluation, but more to do, which we're progressing. So that's been articulated in the plan, again, just to pull that out. And the issue about people accessing the right information in as easily as possible. So we do have the local offer website. I think we've identified ourselves that the platform does need some modernisation, which our ICT colleagues are supporting us with. So some minor improvements to begin with, but greater level of functionality on that platform moving forward is going to be worked up. So again, short-term, medium, and then longer-term improvements, but working with our colleagues on those. So what's next? And Kelly Williams has been remarkable in this whole process, supporting us and ensuring that there was a robust, I suppose, framework of project management around making this happen, especially when you're coordinating so many people. So Kelly has sent me through the latest update of what will this plan look like when it gets submitted. So I will bring that on the screen if colleagues are interested. So we have got final edits. So the document that you've got in front of you has been transferred now to the template that was created. The colour scheme is from the Bracknell Forest template, but it's been chosen by the individuals because of easy to read, easy to understand, suitable for people with visual impairments. So all of those things have been considered and contributed by the groups as to where the colour scheme and the simplicity of the document that you will see in its final form. So just explaining who'd inputted into that decision. So the final edits, proofreading and more design work to take place is needed, and a little bit about content from our health colleagues as identified before. Any feedback from tonight in terms of the plan detail that we've missed or we think needs to be slightly changed, doesn't fully represent our picture. And then we can say that's then the final edit in terms of the content. The document has already been signed off through Frimley Integrated Care System, and they are the other partner. So remember, this is a joint inspection. So they are the other statutory body who this inspection report relates to, and it's already been signed off through those, and it's already been through ours. Now, we have a SEND Improvement Partnership Board where partners come together who will monitor and scrutinise. But in terms of formal governance routes for the council, we will be giving this significant levels of oversight. We'll be managing the process within a programme governance structure. It'll be feeding into the corporate programme. There'll also be separate reports every other month to the corporate management team and quarterly reports to the executive on progress of the implementation of the actions within the written statement of action that you have in front of you tonight. We will also be monitored formally by Department for Education and the Care Quality Commission on behalf of Ofsted. But Ofsted is the body that actually agrees the plan, and then we're monitored by Department for Education and Care Quality Commission. We do have the Department for Education colleague and NHS England on our SEND Improvement Partnership Board, and we have received feedback which we've taken on board in the various iterations of the plan. So, colleagues, I'll take that down and quickly go into, very briefly, if you don't mind, Chair, just to give a quick view of look and feel, not asking you to look at content, but the current iteration of this. If I can just show this just for a moment. because it's come to me. Oh, wrong document. Right document. Which one? No, we've got the wrong one. So what document can you now see on the screen?
We can see the written statement of action
With the graphic.
with the graphics and the logos.
Okay, so I'll quickly just go down. So at the moment, that's what the first page is looking like. Can you see it on the screen? Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the first formatting of it. Listed, written quite simply and easily for people to read. The forward we have basic format, and then we haven't got many graphs. Got some of the numbers in the narrative. Just want to get down to the actual, give you an example of an action plan and what they look like. At the moment, they're showing on 2 pages. Let me forget that. That's the latest governance structure as it stands. That our chief exec will be interested in seeing that. So showing it on the screen tonight, but as I say, just some minor changes we need to make, and those opportunities still exist. And those are the actions. So you'll see them in the Word document that you have in front of you. It's probably PDF, isn't it? But this is how simply it's going to be visible on on the version that will be published and sent to our partners. So this is just to give you a flavour of what it's currently looking like. The content isn't different to the one that you have in front of you, subject to any final amendments that have gone in. And Chair, I will pause there to take questions.
Yeah. Thank you very much for a very comprehensive presentation, and in particular for showing the graphics at the end as to what the finished document will look like. Colleagues, are there any questions for Gráinne? No, I think, sorry, yeah, Councillor Brunel Walker.
I'll just use Derek's. Thank you for the comprehensive report. I've got a couple of questions just on the translation between the varying documents that we've seen here and the one that you've just presented in the final draft. In the document, there's references, there's blue lines of table data that's missing, of information around the number of EHCPs done within 20 weeks, with the blue line to say insert here. There's another graph that talks about primary assessment or primary diagnosis for an EHCP. It's got asterisks on it relating to autism, ASD, but then doesn't have a reference as to what that means or why there's an asterisk to it. So that there's a few things that I want to make sure that, because we're being asked to approve something that's based on the documents that we've got in our systems here. The version that we've got on the screen, you're saying, isn't any different apart from the formatting, and yet there's still gaps in the draft that we're being asked to approve. So I just want to make sure that some of those things that are still to be inserted or referenced will be inserted in the final version, and that we get a chance to understand what those are. I mean, I should declare an interest, as I've done before. My daughter is the recipient of or subject of an EHCP, not in this authority, I should say, and so it's something I'm very passionate about. And it's something when I work with other parents and with the other groups that I'm in, as part of that greater collective, it's some of the things that keep coming up time and time again. So things like being able to see a report that references the amount of EHCPs granted within 20 weeks, and yet that's missing from the draft, that's kind of an important factor for me, and I can't actually reference that in the document you just shared on screen, because obviously we don't have that final document. So I have some questions just around the completeness of some of those issues, some of those pieces.
Thank you, Councillor Brunel Walker. Gráinne?
Yes, no, that's fine, and I fully understand. Hopefully, unfortunately, me explaining editing and final proofing, I didn't make that clear. So we met for 5 hours on Friday, from recollection, just to go through those final points. Um, we needed various different tables in front of us at that point to put those numbers in. 49.9%. From recollection, but again, just that was my recollection, but I needed Kelly to go back and check that that is the figure from the table. So that we've got with our performance colleagues at that point that weren't available. Kelly has now done that. So where those little amends, we were going through every single line painstakingly just to look at what we could provide then and where was the evidence, because I didn't want, you can't view my memory as a way of actually putting that figure in. So for the 2021, it was 49.9, but subject to us double checking. So those have gone through. When I've said there'll be no significant changes, it's the content of the actions. So the actions are the material things in there that our co-production partners have come up with. So those actions won't change unless you gave us feedback tonight to say we think that one is fundamentally wrong, or that will not achieve that. So when I talked about changes, that was what I was referencing. So of course we'll ensure that the final version, all of those asterisks and I call it editing and proofing, those final parts of that document. So the document has also been, as of Friday evening, it's been given to a number of parents, carers, a number of officers in the council have gone through, proofread, and doing their own. How does this sound to you? We don't quite understand, because when officers have been reading and developing documents, they don't always see it with objective eyes. So and the people from various different departments, I think Andrew's, Kevin's, yours may have been involved as well, have been reading the document for those final proofreads and saying this doesn't sound right. So Kelly's been going through today as well and looking at where there's an and missing or a comma or the format isn't quite right. So that work is continuing. So sorry that I wasn't clear.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I apologise.
Yes. So there's an update document circulated. I've got Councillor Hayden for a question, and then Councillor Birch.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for the presentation and the clarity of it. There's a lot of stakeholders and there's a lot of public interest. Is there a sort of synchronised communications plan that those who need can be kept abreast? Because obviously it affects a lot of parents and it's a very public area of concern, I suspect. There's an awful lot of strands here. How's that going to be synchronised in terms of communicating to all the people who need to know?
That's a really good question, Councillor. What's actually happened is we've engaged our corporate communication colleagues in the Send Improvement Partnership Board, and there's been a working group with the various stakeholders to actually create an initial communication plan. And communication for SEND is one of the priorities with the communications team for the council for this year. So the initial draft has been prepared. There's a further working group now taking place to what are those detailed messages that need to be communicated and when. So that level of detail came out of the board last Thursday morning. So please be reassured the comm support is being provided, the plan's being worked up collaboratively together, and then how we enact that is going to get some support as well as a partnership. Our health colleagues are going to be engaging with the communication from the health side, because we want to make sure that there's consistent communication going out from both agencies. So it's something that our co-production partners and parents are really keen on. In terms of some of that messaging as well, part of the work that we've been engaging with our parents and carers, because they say they are critical, is around how they communicate and who they communicate with on our collective behalf, so that we can get some consistent updates and a two-way flow of information, rather than, as is indicated, people struggling to communicate with us. And as part of that work, they previously only had a Facebook page. They didn't have a website, so anybody and everybody could just put comments on a Facebook page. And so the part of work that we're engaging, what we're commissioning from them, is a more effective way of engaging with parents and a more effective way of communicating with parents. So they'll have not quite membership, but they'll have people who have joined the forum formally. They're on a list. They're communicating with them. They've then got a thorough chain of how they reach a broader group of people and more effective communication as to how they get the voices back. Because they are, whilst they will engage a broad group of people for us, not all of those parents can get involved with us, but they can attend some parent carer forums. So by actually strengthening the offer from the parent carer forum will also strengthen our ability to engage with a broader group of parents. So they are key in that communication strategy development.
Thank you, Grania. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so Councillor Brown-Walker and then Councillor Birch.
Thank you for that. And as I said in the chat, my apologies. My mod.gov's only just given me the updated document. One of the points I wanted to make is pick up on Councillor Hayden's comments around communication. Is when you look at a lot of the other neighbouring authorities and a lot of the other online support groups, which are really good, so the Send Voices group, etc., etc. In Wokingham, they call it Sendias. Over here, we have the Council for something or other, the Council for Disabled Children. Is there any possibility of, as part of this communication, actually trying to kind of harmonise what we're doing in terms of naming conventions? Because if you've got parents that sit in different areas or one group that's serving two areas, again, it's causing some disparity in how people refer to things. The Sendias service is well acknowledged in the Wokingham parents as being a champion and a voice for those parents and as a guide for people trying to get through the system. And I'd like to think that our own equivalent would be the same. So I just wonder, as part of that communications, whether any thought has been done to that. I'd also counsel that social media, in terms of Facebook, is probably a better forum than asking parents to log into a website, have a verification, have a forum, have a system. So I just think there's different things for different people.
Thank you, Councillor Brunel-Walker-Grania.
No, I agree. It wasn't either or in terms of the Facebook page. So just to be clear, but it was about having, again, something that documents could be kept on, referred to, and people could access if they needed to. It just had better functionality, so it's not either or, just for reassurance. And you'll be reassured to know, Councillor, that the council does invest in its own Sendias. So we have a Sendias service in Bracknell Forest that's been in place for quite some time, and that is actually funded through the council. So that is an offer that is very, very well used. It was used during the inspection. The feedback on the Sendias service was very, very positive, and that is referenced in the report, in the inspection report. So Sendias is referenced. So just to reassure you, we do have one of those that is very heavily utilised by our parents.
Thank you, Grania. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chairman. In paragraph 5.2 of the report, it says the local area is required to submit a written statement of action by the 7th of June, so next week. Is there any form of commitment from Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission on when they will issue their response? Because that, I think, is a key, will be the next key part of the assessment of this work.
It is expected that we'll get an initial view within 10 working days. So that, if I've remembered the guidance correctly, Councillor Birch. So initial view. A number of our neighbouring authorities had to make some amendments after the first submission. So we're hoping that the comprehensive process that we followed makes sure that we don't have to. But we do not fully understand the lens of Ofsted on that. So we'll have to see. But my understanding is it's 10 working days.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you. In my work as ward councillor, I have been approached by parents who are concerned, and this especially in the past year, that their child doesn't have a school place or an appropriate SEND school place. And I notice this is in the improvement plan. Improvement area 4. We're talking about making sure that we should have a single school places plan for SEND provision. Given that we've got a kind of mixed economy of schools and every child that needs SEND education may have a plan that's somewhat different and have different needs, what levers do we have to make sure that the schools that we have in the borough produce the places that we need. And
Sheriff,
yeah,
Thank you, Grania.
thank you.
I'm on to that. I think that that's a really interesting point that we have been debating for quite some time, because we have more levers with obviously some schools and others. But ultimately, what you can be assured of is that all of our schools are committed to improve special educational needs and disabilities for our children in Bracknell Forest. And some of the work that Cheryl's done is actually been going out to those schools, explaining not only the difference in outcomes when children have to be transported so far away from their homes and their families, but also the actual cost of some of those very expensive independent provisions out of borough, purely because we don't have the spaces in borough. So I think when you actually show them the actual cost, and they understand that some of that support and potentially some of the money flow would also be made available for them to support those children locally, because they are committed to local children and getting the right sense support for local for their pupils. They're really keen on working with us. So as part of the discussions, they are committed. What we have to do is recognise that we work in partnership. So working in partnership and engaging the head teachers in the various different stages, understanding what their tensions are and challenges, because they are significant post-COVID. They are at a different level, is my observations having spoken to the heads and the schools. But they are also committed, and we've had a number of heads in the discussions around the table, in addition to the majority of our head teachers, if not all of them, Joe will be able to clarify, attending the school place plan discussions where we're entering into debate and dialogue about the special resource provisions and potentially where they might be. And you'll recall from the school place plan, discussions about additional special school places as well indicated in that report that you've already signed off as an executive, and that work is progressing. So I do fully understand the question and the emphasis of the lack of control that local authorities might have in some instances, but I can assure you that we do have commitment from our schools to work with us to provide more capacity within the borough.
Okay, thank you. You want to come?
Yeah, could I
follow up
just,
supplementary?
is that universal? Because I know I've seen education change over the past 20 years or so. I think we used to have the idea that we had special schools, and the desire was very much that we make sure that we actually have some SEND provision within mainstream schooling, and we provide the extra support. But I think there was always a tension there that schools that were focused on academic results might feel that if they take more children who are not, not so focused academically, and possibly that would include a lot of SEND children potentially, that may damage their standing in league tables and that sort of thing. Is there any reluctance in that way at the moment?
We've seen no evidence to indicate that, and it is a very insightful question. But there is no evidence at the moment to indicate that. That the conversations are more about recognising that increasingly these children have got very complex needs, and how do we support the schools to support those children and young people to have their educational needs met in mainstream provision in the majority of cases. So when we talk about special resource provisions and we talk about specialist resource units, the provisions mean that those children are educated within mainstream schools, but they have some space to desensitise, etc., outside of that, and that's built into the fabric of the school. So to encourage as many of our schools to be able to support those young people, it's about how we then support the schools to be able to support the young people, and what that wraparound support looks like, not only from us as a local authority in terms of behavioural support and other, but also from our health colleagues in terms of the input that they make. In terms of the special school numbers, I won't get onto the disability movement now, but some people articulate that every single child should be and can be educated within mainstream provision, and nationally that is a view. I think we recognise in Bracknell Forest that we do have to have a selection, a combination of the specialist input and significant levels of expertise for some children, young people who are really, really complex, who the majority of our mainstream schools might struggle to support, irrespective of what support we can put in with them and for them as a local authority.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions, so thank you very much, Gronnie, for answering the questions and for the presentation. Colleagues, I'd now like to move the recommendations as they appear in section 2 of the report, 2.1, noting the current draft of the written statement of action, and 2.2 to endorse the content of the written statement of action. Thank you very much. Can I first of all start by echoing the comments that the Director made earlier, that to apologise to those families and to children who've not received the support of the sort that we would want in Bracknell Forest, and also to be very clear tonight that the ultimate aim of all the actions being undertaken, be there in a written statement of action, the wider action plan, is about delivering better outcomes for children and young people, meeting their needs and making sure that we have a very strong child-focused service going forward. I'm asking colleagues tonight for you to endorse and support this written statement of action because you heard from the Director the range of engagement, the approach that has been taken, the huge amount of work that has gone on, and this has given me confidence as the Executive Member for Children, Young People and Learning that our work with parents and carers, our engagement with key partners will be effective in delivering short, medium and longer term objectives under this plan. We were particularly stung, and I was, by the comments about the wall of silence that appeared in the report relating to communication with families. That is something that is being urgently addressed operationally. But strategically, this is about putting together the right roadmap for delivery. Yes, we have the written statement of action which we'll be submitting to DFE and to CQC on behalf of Ofsted, but behind that there is a much wider action plan and more importantly a focus on delivery, timeliness, quality of actions and engagement. In a longer term, the work that has been undertaken around pupil-placed planning and how we're going to build additional capacity for children with additional needs to be educated within Bracknell Forest is progressing, and it's fully involving our schools and other stakeholders in this. I want to pay particular tribute tonight to our parents and carers who really have got involved in co-producing this written statement of action. Their challenge, their engagement, their involvement, and actually their pragmatism and understanding has been very, very important. And their involvement and in fact co-chairing the SEND Partnership Board going forward, I think will make a huge and lasting difference. Our view very much as a council is that we want that challenge on an ongoing basis. And although we recognise the challenges that might be posed by other partners in this, that ultimately is about delivering a really good, strong service going forward. As the Director said, that when Ofsted came in, they did comment that we knew ourselves in terms of our plan that we had in place at the time. But I think what this process has shown is that there was much more that needed to be done. And I think the honesty of the approach that has been taken to understand what needs to be done has been very, very key in this. So colleagues, I believe that there is sufficient capacity, there is sufficient drive, and there is the willingness to really deliver on the actions in this and the wider action plan. And it's for that reason that I believe it's credible that we support this as it goes forward to be worked on in the future. That's all I've got to say for the moment. Does the seconder wish to speak at this point?
I'll reserve, if I
Thank
may,
you.
Chairman.
Does anybody else wish to speak at this point? Okay, I think, so Councillor Brunel Walker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll speak briefly. I think I've made some of the points I was going to make. Reflecting on this as the parent of a child with special educational needs, and reflecting on the comment that you just made, I think this is not what we would expect for parents and young people in our borough. And I think I echo the apology. I think it's right. I support the statement. I've read the draft version, albeit the other version before this one came out, cover to cover with a keen interest. I believe that it's a journey that we're on. We've got some distance to go. I think we have carefully looked, and I think I'm grateful for all of the feedback that parents have given us on where we aren't doing as well as we should be doing and where we can improve. I think it's not just us. I think obviously, we have our other partners that we need to have a look at as well. I think when you look at the national picture for some of this, there's a national element to this as well. But when you see a large variety or a large number of parents going, how do I get this assessment done privately? How do I move this forward? Where do I go? I think there is a bigger issue nationally with how this is funded as well. And I think more funding is required in a number of areas. But having taken all the factors into account, having read this and the action plan, which is, forgetting the rest of the words, it's those action plans and those comments that are absolutely vital to making this work. I look forward to getting regular feedbacks as to our performance against those targets. I look forward to seeing more happier, less unhappy parents, whichever is the right words to use, when they're talking about the experiences for their children. I mean, these are children with some complex needs in many cases. I look forward to a day when I don't have to look down at a bar chart and see that level of percentages of assessments being done within 20 weeks. The COVID one I know is a slight exception, but on the whole, there's a huge amount of work that's gone into this report. I'm grateful for the amount of work and that this has been put together so quickly. I hope that we get our feedback quickly so that actually beyond this written statement, we can just get on and get this done. Because that's the main thing now. We get this statement done, we move on, we put the plans into place, and we make this a better experience for everybody. So with all that in mind, Chairman, I would be supporting this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chairman. I was pleased to second and therefore endorse the report going forward because in order to confirm our serious commitment to our children and young people, and this administration has had our children and young people uppermost in its thought for a very long time. Can I also thank our officers for all the extensive and detailed briefings all members have had on this important issues, and we've all had the opportunity, numerous opportunities in fact, to contribute to and to challenge the written statement. So our confidence in it should be very high. Can I also recognise all the work that has gone into this statement of action? And Siggins mentioned one or two people, but I do know that there have been an awful lot of people and within this council and from other organisations who have taken this to heart and have worked tirelessly to arrive at this very important statement. And I'll confirm one of the earlier comments that this is now about moving forward. It's about doing the learning, moving forward, and delivering on our plans and promises at pace. With detail down to the colour scheme of each page, I really do look forward to receiving the Ofsted response. And I was pleased to hear that we will get an early response from the Ofsted's CQC, because that will be one of the first tests. And what I'm keen to make sure is that if we do have to make any adjustments to the things we are already delivering, that the sooner we can get a response from those inspectors, then the better the quality of that delivery will be. Can I also just come to the area 5 and 6 comments made in the presentation, and that is, and I make these comments as chairman of the Health and Wellbeing Board here for Bracknell Forest. I will be particularly keen and particularly interested in monitoring this joint plan with all our partners, all those partners that are responsible for our children and young people, such as the Frimley ICS and the Berkshire Healthcare Foundation Trust, because hopefully with the new ICS and the changes in the NHS and health reforms, our Health and Wellbeing Board will have a bit more teeth, a few more teeth, should I say, in order to see that the quality and performance in all areas of health for all age groups is properly delivered. And we will soon have our health and wellbeing strategy, and that too, when you will see that, members, will focus again a very strong commitment on our children and young people. So in thanking all those involved, I'm now keen to get this off to the inspectors, get their response back and get on with delivering it. And I really want to see those happy parents and happy children that will be the result. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With no one else wishing to speak this evening, so to sum up. So first of all, I think to echo all the comments, we are very grateful to all those who've been involved in the production of this strategy. And as I said at the start, you know, there has been a huge amount of work. I think the co-production, the involvement of partners and parents and carers has been key in this. For me, I think there's been a huge integrity in the process as well, where there has been an openness to challenge, there's been an openness to sharing some uncomfortable things as well to make sure that we move forward. I work for a company where they have an abiding word, which is intensity, and I think that really sums up the pace necessary to deliver on this, because I said at the start, this is ultimately about making sure that we rapidly improve outcomes for children and young people, and that we find the right place. We know that there will always be challenges in this when there are multiple professionals involved. It's about finding the right outcome, but I think it's by trusting our parents and carers and families. I think it's about trusting the views and voices of our young people in this as well that will helpfully navigate that. Ultimately, you know, questions have been asked, and it is about communication. It is about ensuring that we're open and honest with the messaging that we have to families, that we respond to their inquiries, and that we actually understand, listen and embrace what's being asked of us and what's being said. This, as Councillor Bruno Walker said, is a very complex area. I fully appreciate and understand that it can be very worrying for parents if there's uncertainty over the future, the challenges that schooling, the challenges that education can pose. So as an organisation and with our partners, we need to make sure that we're responsive to that we understand what we need to do. This written statement of action is a starting point. I think it's clear from this that we embrace and acknowledge what the inspection found. We understand what is expected of us, what we need to do, but also that beyond this written statement of action, we have a broader action plan, which I say very much is a sort of roadmap for delivery. And that therefore, I would like to thank everyone that's been involved in this, and for all those people that day to day deliver for children and young people with special needs, just to make sure that they have our support, that they understand how challenging it is, and that we can go forward and actually make sure that this service improves and is another good service in Bracknell Forest, because that's important to us. So with that, colleagues, can I ask for a vote on that? All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. And with that, to close the meeting, Gronya, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Thank you everyone for attending. This meeting is closed. Thank you.